Now we'll sing 180 before the lesson. Let us all unite to sing, God is love. Let heaven and earth their praises bring, God is love. Let every soul from sin away, each in his heart sweet music made, and sing with us for Jesus' sake, for God is love. God is love. God is love. Come, let us all unite to sing that God is love. Ocean diversity, Moses found, God is love. In Christ we have redemption found, God is love. His blood has washed our sins away, His Spirit turned our night to day, and now we can rejoice to say that God is love. God is love. God is love. Come, let us all unite to sing that God is love. How happy is our portion here, God is love. His promises our spirits share, God is love. He is our sun and shield by day, our help, our hope, our strength and stay. He will be with us all the way. Our God is love. God is love. God is love. Come, let us all unite to sing that God is love.
Good to see this good number. And our visitors back there. Good to see everybody. This is the first Sunday night of the month. It's my rotation night. It's good to see this, everybody here. Good number. I'm a little nervous. It's been a while since I had a whole night thing. I've done little devos occasionally. It reminded me years ago, I was earlier starting doing fill-in preaching and nervous like I am tonight. And I presented a lesson and went back to the back of the room and was coming out. Well, Reva Payne stopped and said, "You paid me a compliment. You're doing a good job." And kind of pepping me up. And she said, when you said Apostle Paul, I knew you meant Apostle Peter. So I warned you. It may be that way tonight. I looked at some sermon outlines and stuff to find the lesson that I wanted, and I saw this one, and it created some interest in me, and I thought, I hope it will you. The scariest passage in the Bible. This will be a little short study of this unlikely passage to wear this title. Give you a hint, it's in Luke. Luke chapter 6, verse 27 through 38, a little lengthy reading if you'd like to read along with me. Luke chapter 6, verse 27 through 38. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. To him who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other also. And from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give everyone who asks of you, and from him who takes away your goods, do not ask them back. And just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. But if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much back. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the unthankful and evil. Therefore be merciful, just as your Father also is merciful. Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be measured to you. Good measure, pressed down, shake together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For with this same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. The outline, the guy who wrote it, was in the opinion that this is the scariest passage in the Bible. And we're all, I think, familiar with it, but we really went into detail to study it, I think, sometimes. I'm in that same opinion. Many think the most frightening passage in the Bible would be in the book of Revelations. And that was really the first thought coming to my mind when I saw the sign. For example, it talks about the pit and the dragon and the lake of fire and all that business. Others might refer to in 2 Peter chapter 3, where Peter talks about the end of the world. Or perhaps Matthew 24, as Jesus described the terrible suffering and horror of the destruction of Jerusalem and his final coming in glory and power. These other passages disturb us because of the dramatic picture that we have, and we can see, we think about dragons and fire and stuff. But since they talk about this, these things that have either already happened or will happen into the future, it's easy to blow them off, to forget about it, when reality hits us, when we think about that. When we go out the back door, or the door, I call it the back door, the world comes crashing in when we leave this building. But when I read Luke 6, 23 through 38, I feel uncomfortable. I feel challenged, even frightened for various specific reasons. The demands are personal. In the first few words of the passage, there's no mistaking who Jesus is talking to. He says, "But I say to you, who hears?" Well, there's two people involved here, and one idea is implied. There's Jesus, who is speaking and specifying that these are his words, these are his commandments, And then there is the listener, the one who's there in person. And every person who reads these words, he's saying, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking about something being in time idea up there about people in general. No, he's talking directly to you. If you're somebody who hears, then I'm talking to you. There's an understanding that if you claim to be a disciple, or you claim to be a believer, if you claim to be one wearing the name Christian, then you are the ones who hear. This passage is scary because Jesus is making it personal. He directly confronts all of his disciples and forces them to deal with what he's saying. So I'm a little shaky because Jesus is dealing with me on a personal level. And again, that's not some sort of broad doctrine statement open to interpretation or fine-tuning. He's talking directly to me as I read these passages, very openly and very forcefully. The demands are radical. The commentary I read about this verse spends most of the time trying to water down or rationalize the things that Jesus is saying here. No wonder. Look at the things that the Lord is saying for his disciples to do. The first one, love their enemies, verse 27 through 35. Bill was talking, I think, Wednesday night, but what is our enemies? Do we have enemies? And we do. In a sense, we do. For sure, not loving the enemies like at arm ranks, because we might, we were at war, Vietnam, we were Afghanistan, over in Gaza now, there's problems with the Palestinians, West Bank. It's really hard to tell who's our enemy and who's not over there now. They're bombing that area over there alive. But he's asking his disciples to love their enemies up close and personal. He says, do good to those who hate you, not just the people that bug you, people that hate you. He said, bless. Say good things about those who say bad things about you. You say good things about people who say bad things about you. Pray for those who have done bad things to you in the past. They cheated you. They lied about you. They hurt you in some way or other. You know what it is? We need to be concerned about those that we're upset with. Maybe give Randy a card by the visitation. Maybe we ought to visit these people. Keep them on our list. He's talking about returning good for evil. Turn the other cheek. Give him the coat. Don't demand it back when it's taken from you. Resisting the impulse to giving as good as you get, or getting even, or not fighting fire with fire, or violence with violence, or cheating with cheating. Give to people, even evil ones, without expecting that they would give back to you in the same way or what you deserve. Sometimes there may be way in those foreign countries that we could help groups and stuff that do work over there. Jesus is commanding his disciples to do this towards their enemies. Then he says, be merciful in verse 36 and 37. To our enemies, we should do good. To all, we should be merciful. Explain the nature of the mercy we are to practice towards all people. We're not to judge or condemn. We are to be forgiving. Sometimes our families, our friends hurt us, or annoy us, or disappoint us. And when that happens, we're not to judge. We're not to condemn. He says we are to forgive them. Forgiveness is an automatic response we should have to do who harm us, loving our enemies, and being merciful to everyone else is radical, because if you do this, it would mean a radical change in our lives. It would remove from our lives a reason or excuse or rationalization for revenge of any kind. It would make us completely vulnerable to those who would insult us or take advantage of us. The idea is that the only response to evil is good, not violence, not threats or worse evil. We can see the fighting fires with fire has done it to the political discourse in this world we live in, this nation. Watch some of the, when they were trying to select the committee chairs and stuff, and the two political parties continuously badmouthing each other, stuff, trying to find the right answers in this nation we live in. It would see us always obligated to forgive and seek reconciliation, whether other persons ask, or deserve it not. That's crazy. I know, I don't know about you, but this would be a radical change in my life. I like to get even. Forgive me, but I like to get even. I don't want someone to hurt me without paying some kind of price. I need to feel secure that no one will insult or cheat or take my position in a fight. I will forgive, but only if the other person repents and asks for my forgiveness. Okay, then I'm ready to forgive. I think about some time back, a year or two, there was a guy that contacted us on phone and was moving here to work on the fiber to the house, which I was somewhat familiar with. And somehow or another, he supposedly didn't get his check, and his family was going to have to spend the night in the U-Haul. And but he needed $400. But he was going to get it Monday, and I agreed that I would do that. And he was going to be at Walmart getting a flat fixed on his truck, but he'd meet me out the front door. He should have told me something there. But he gave me a phone number for his boss. He gave me a phone number for the church in a little town in Mississippi. And when I gave him the $400, I knew then it was gone, that it was a slam. And I wanted to for longest. I did a few times. I'd call those numbers. They wouldn't answer, but I'd keep calling them. I wanted to get even. The change that Jesus asked for us, they're radical because they strike at the core of my pride and my security as a human being. They asked me to humble myself and to become completely vulnerable and to take a gentleness that is completely foreign to me. And I don't know about you, but that's scary. It makes me afraid. The third reason why this passage is the scariest in the Bible, it's impossible. We may have gasped these ideas in our head and know and heard and read this scripture before, but have you connected with reality what the passage means? Can you love and say good things about people you know hate you and haven't done bad things to you? Can you do nothing if someone slaps you in the face? How about if they insult your wife? Can you do anything? How about if they cheat your child out of a deserved prize? Did you ever show out at a ball game with your kids you took that you felt like the kids was getting cheated? You can do that. We've got in a game at Pangburn. I don't like people in Pangburn yet. Feel like they cheated by it. my daughter's team. Can you give every time someone asks? What about the guy at Walmart sits on the road out there with a sign that says that he needs food or he needs gas? Are you in mind? You probably think this guy, he's probably going to go out and buy cigarettes or beer or something nasty or whatever. But I'm thinking, give when they ask. So I keep a little change in the truck, and occasionally I'll stop. I don't do it every time because sometimes only thing I got's a $20 bill, and you pull up that light and he's standing there and whoops, light change, gotta go. Keep on going. Can you forgive and love those who don't care if you forgive them and they tell you so? It's one thing when the other person says, I'm sorry, I would never hurt you. I was just upset and wasn't thinking the words just came, please forgive. That guy is easy to forget. I can forget him. Well, what about the guy that says, I don't give a rip how you feel? Keep your forgiveness. I don't know about that guy. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to forgive that guy. If somebody borrows something, can you not demand it back when you need it, even if you need it? Can you say good things about people, even people you don't like? This passage is scary because it's impossible. Who can be like this all the time? The answer, nobody. Nobody can be like this all the time. So it's pretty scary when the Lord commands us to do something that's impossible. If it's impossible, then why did Jesus say that we should do this? A couple reasons. Why, or maybe a test. Jesus is weeding out the true disciples from the fakes. The person who hears these words and thinks he's already done them or can do them is a self-righteous fool. Yeah, I can do that, no problem. You're living in a dreamland, my friend. The person who hears these words and thinks they're impossible to do and quits the Lord is the one who has no faith. But the one who hears the words, ignores them, and calls himself a Christian anyway, he's a hypocrite. He's saying, I didn't really mean that. He didn't really mean that anyway. It's not really for me. But the person who hears the word and sees that they are beyond him or her and cries out to God for help, this is a person who truly hears. This is a person who truly understands. This is a true disciple. Can you not hear the words of the Father where they had the son that was sick, that we studied recently, whose son was ill and nobody could cure him? And Jesus says, if you believe, and he said, I believe, but help my disbelief. Can you not just hear the cries of the anguish of that father? Okay, I believe anything. Please take care of my son. What's he saying? I know I have to believe, but I can't get there. I can't get there, Lord. Please help me get there. Jesus gives these words to weed out the fakes, the hypocrites, and the fools. The second one, Jesus has given us a glimpse of the kingdom that is fully developed in us. It's a preview. These words represent a person who is totally dependent on God, totally vulnerable, totally removed from this world, while he's still in it, totally filled with love for others without regard to self. These words show the pure spirit of Christ as he was and as we can become through him. When he says these words, he's holding up an image. This image is, he's saying, this is you in the future. This is who I want you, or who I will enable you to become. He loves his enemy as Jesus did. He gave without thought of return. He did not resist the evil he was sent to bear. He forgave those who hate him, even while they were hating on him. In this passage, Jesus literally describes his own personality and the character that his disciples will eventually take on as they continue to follow him. The third one, Jesus is challenging his disciples to believe that with God, all things are possible, even the impossible. Things like walking on the water, things like eating his flesh and drinking his blood. Things like being a man or a woman of the kingdom. Man or woman, or a woman of the kingdom. In a world without law and order, it would be impossible. Impossible to be as vulnerable as this passage says. We would be killed. We would be robbed. We would be crushed immediately. But God has provided law and government to protect and to render justice in this world. And that law protects Christians as well. It's not perfect. It's not evenly distributed, but it's there. Christians cannot seek revenge, but they can seek protection under the law. And they have the right to a fair justice that God has provided for everyone living in this world. So we can practice the love of enemies and the doing of good without context and the protection of law and order. In a world where we would have to provide for ourselves, freely giving without demanding a return would be foolish and costly. But God promised us that he will provide not only for our needs, but also for our acts of giving as well. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. So we can practice charity with assurance that God will provide the charity that we give. There's a Newport the other day, a couple of guys standing at the door and collecting for something like John 3:16. It was a different organization down there. And you walk real fast, you don't have to talk to them to go to the door. But when I started out the other day, after I'd studied this lesson, studied this particular part here, there was two of them there, and one of them had a lady visiting with, and the other one stepped out and said, "Mister, don't you want to make a donation?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And it scared him, me too. In a world of payback, which is the only way to protect oneself in this world, where forgiveness is painful and is seen as a sign of weakness, God offers his Son, Jesus Christ, in public disgrace as a sacrifice for your personal sins. He did that with loving kindness to obtain our forgiveness. This is done also as an example for you to follow as you do this. Ask this question: has anyone ever had to suffer as much or endured as great a humiliation as Jesus in order to accomplish forgiveness? When was the last time saying, "I'm sorry," or "Please forgive me," or "I forgive you," when was the last time you said this? This costs you as much as saying, "I forgive you," cost Jesus. If you were ever in a situation where someone harmed you and you were working on the strength to be able to forgive them, just compare what happened to you as what happened to Jesus. Just compare how much this is costing me to forgive the person to whom what it cost Jesus, to offer forgiveness to all of us, and to get things in a spiritual perspective. You see, in this Luke 6, these words are impossible without Christ. But with Christ, they become possible and even desirable as we change into his character. You see, they are impossible for an earthly, human, temporal person, but these scary words can become possible for with a heavenly, spiritual, eternal beings that we are to become in Christ Jesus. The Lord is weeding out his followers, and he's continually doing this. We think, well, he's weeding out the apostles and those people in the first century. But the work of weeding out or pruning up continues this day. He prunes churches. He prunes individuals. He prunes you. He prunes me. That work is always happening. If we could just kind of get our life into this context, that everything happens to you in our lives is taking place through the sovereignty and the authority and the knowledge of God. So do you feel comfortable with these words? In Mark chapter 4, verse 9, it reads, "And he said, he who has ears to hear, let him hear and heed my words." Do you want to quit? Does it make you want to quit? Do you even hear them at all? Are you saying to yourself, Lord, help me. Lord, help me be able to do these things. Jesus is impossible. This is impossible to do without you. Is that what you're saying? Jesus gives us a scary passage. He gives us a difficult moment so that we'll be forced to let go of the possible with the probable, let go and just do it. Or to no fear attitude of this world and cling to him in faith in order to achieve spiritual, radical, and seemingly impossible things of our life in the kingdom. And that's my little devotion tonight. If you need him for the impossibilities in your life, we encourage you to come forward now for prayer, for encouragement, for conversion, and repentance and baptism. If you have a need, won't you come now while we stand and while we sing?